The XRP ledger isn't yet ready for global finance because of its TPS. That one statement set the entire XRP community on fire because it cuts right to the core of what everyone's been wondering. Can the XRP ledger really handle the world's financial volume? Can it actually run the rails for institutions like Visa, MasterCard, or even central banks? Well, today we're breaking that down because new data, recent protocol upgrades, and Ripple's massive corporate moves show a completely different picture from what most people realize, and it's happening fast. This is not financial advice. Now, if you're serious about understanding where all this is heading, how Ripple, XRP, and tokenization are converging into one of the biggest wealth shifts of our time, I put together something special. It's called the XRP Millionaire Blueprint. It's a complete guide that includes a visual breakdown, an exclusive video, and detailed documents that show how institutions are setting up this new infrastructure. You'll see how everyday investors can actually position themselves before full-scale adoption hits. It's concise, visual, and built for clarity. Check it out in the pinned comment below. Alright, let's talk TPS scaling and how Ripple is quietly solving the problem Jake Claver brought up. For years, people said the XRP ledger could handle around 1,500 transactions per second. That's fast, but not enough for a world running trillions in instant value transfers. The truth is that limitation was more of a baseline test, not a hard cap. Throughout 2025, Ripple's engineering team pushed the XRPL's throughput higher than it's ever been. Internal tests earlier this year recorded stable throughput around 1,500 TPS with bursts up to 3,400 TPS under load. And that's before subnets or sidechains even come online. What they've done is optimize how validators coordinate and how ledgers close. It's deep-level architecture work, reducing consensus latency, parallelizing transaction validation, and keeping that 5-second finality intact. Basically, instead of a single file traffic lane, they're opening multiple validated lanes that can all process simultaneously. And what's incredible is they're doing this without sacrificing energy efficiency. Even with institutional level stress testing, the ledger's latency stays under 5 seconds per transaction. But that's just the warm-up. Matt Hamilton, who helped build the XRPL when he was at Ripple, confirmed something massive, that the ledger can scale infinitely when you combine payment channels, sidechains, and what's known as an implicit or explicit subnet. And here's where it gets interesting. Old Ripple insider Bob Way actually holds a patent for a subnet system designed for the XRP ledger. If that subnet is deployed, and it looks like the groundwork is being laid right now, XRP's scaling potential moves from thousands to potentially millions of TPS. That's MasterCard and Visa territory and beyond. This is what Ripple's been quietly preparing for behind the scenes. Everyone keeps thinking about XRP just as a bridge currency, but what's unfolding is much bigger. The XRP ledger is evolving into the backbone of a global settlement layer. And this year, it made its biggest leap forward yet, the introduction of the Multipurpose Token Standard or MPT, activated on October 1st, 2025. MPT is the single biggest upgrade to the ledger since XLS20 introduced NFTs. But instead of just handling NFTs, MPT embeds both fungible and non-fungible asset capabilities directly into the XRP ledger's core protocol. That means no need for external smart contracts, no extra scripts, and no bloat. This alone changes everything for performance. Every new token, bond, or digital asset issued on XRPPL now runs natively with the same efficiency as XRP itself. RippleX's internal tests confirmed that even with heavy MPT issuance loads, performance stayed stable. Why? Because MPT transactions don't use custom token logic that slows the network down. They're processed with the same lightweight structure as normal XRP transactions. That's a huge deal. It keeps fees ultra low, speeds ultra high, and ensures that every operation still burns a tiny amount of XRP, maintaining that deflationary structure that makes spam attacks practically impossible. And this is just phase 1. Ripple engineers are already researching confidential MPTs, which use zero-knowledge rollups to protect transaction data while increasing scalability even further. Once implemented, this will make XRPPL not only scalable, but also privacy compatible for institutions like central banks, who require discretion for interbank settlements. Now, let's zoom out because what Ripple is doing on the technical side is being perfectly mirrored by what they're doing on the business side. Brad Garlinghouse just dropped a bombshell. Ripple has officially entered the $120 to trillion corporate treasury market by acquiring G Treasury, a massive global player with over 2,000 pre-configured connections to major banks and financial institutions worldwide. G Treasury isn't just a fintech add-on, it's a full-blown institutional network. We're talking direct API connections, Swift compatibility, and host-to-host integrations with the world's largest financial players, Bank of America, JP Morgan, HSBC, Deutsche Bank, ANZ, BNP, Paribas, and hundreds more. With this acquisition, Ripple instantly gained multi-bank access, spanning 13,000 plus banks and 160 countries. This is Ripple's way of saying we're not just a crypto company anymore. We're building the rails for the next generation of finance. Monica Long, Ripple's president, summed it up perfectly. She said Ripple and G Treasury will now help corporates move money faster, cheaper, and 24/7. But beyond that, they'll help companies manage and grow their trapped capital. That phrase, unlocking trapped capital, is crucial because it's the same $120 trillion of idle liquidity that global treasuries have been trying to move efficiently for decades. Ripple just put itself at the center of that system. Think about what that means. Thousands of corporations now connected through Ripple's network, using infrastructure compatible with Swift but powered by blockchain settlement. It's one of the clearest bridges yet between traditional finance and tokenized liquidity. And this isn't theory. The tech stack, the API architecture, and the institutional connections already exist. Brad Garlinghouse himself made this clear during DC FinTech Week when he said crypto should be held to the same compliance standards as traditional finance, AML, KYC, or FAQ, but should also have equal access to infrastructure like a Fed master account. His point was simple. If regulators want to level the playing field, it has to go both ways. And right now, Ripple's building the compliance foundation to make that argument undeniable. Meanwhile, as Ripple's scaling its reach, Europe's financial leaders are drawing hard lines. Christine Lagarde, president of the European Central Bank, said flat out that Bitcoin won't be included in EU central bank reserves. Why? Because reserves must be liquid, secure, and safe, free from money laundering risks. Which makes you wonder, if not Bitcoin, then what digital asset fits those criteria? What can move instantly, settle compliantly, and serve as a bridge between currencies? The list of viable candidates is very short, and XRP sits right at the top. The ECB's statement didn't just affect Bitcoin, it set the tone for the future of institutional crypto adoption. The focus now isn't on speculation, it's on settlement infrastructure, interoperability, and compliance. And that's exactly where Ripple's ecosystem shines. The XRP ledger isn't trying to replace banks, it's giving them a better engine. And what's coming next with subnets and multipurpose tokens could push XRPPL into the same league as MasterCard or Visa, not in competition, but as the invisible backend that runs beneath them. When you combine that with G Treasury's institutional network and the coming rollout of subnet technology, you start to see why insiders are calling this the final phase before full-scale utility-driven adoption. So now the question becomes, how far can Ripple push this before the rest of the financial world realizes what's happening? Because what we're seeing isn't just Ripple making noise. It's Ripple positioning itself in all the right rooms. The G Treasury acquisition connects them to the same infrastructure global banks already use. Swift host-to-host systems and Treasury APIs that have powered finance for decades. But now those same pipes can plug directly into on-chain liquidity through the XRP ledger. It's a transition from messaging to settlement. For decades, Swift has been the backbone of international finance, moving trillions per day. But it doesn't actually move money, it moves messages. Ripple's vision is to replace that outdated relay system with real-time settlement backed by blockchain verification and XRP as the neutral bridge asset. And what makes this especially significant is that G Treasury already has full Swift compatibility. That means Ripple can now seamlessly connect enterprise-grade systems to on-chain settlement without needing to rebuild the rails from scratch. This is the bridge everyone's been waiting for, not just crypto enthusiasts, but banks, corporations, and regulators who need a compliant, auditable, and instant system that integrates with the infrastructure they already trust. And Ripple's timing is perfect. As the world shifts toward tokenized money, everyone from BlackRock, KK to the World Bank is exploring how to digitize and move assets faster. Ripple just quietly made itself the connector for all of it. We're talking about a market with over $120 trillion trapped in outdated systems. Money sitting idle in corporate treasuries because it's too expensive or too slow to move across borders. Ripple's infrastructure, especially combined with G-Treasury, can unlock that liquidity. Imagine thousands of companies moving money in seconds instead of days with near zero fees, all while staying compliant. That's what Ripple's building. Now, let's talk about scalability again, because as global demand grows, XRP needs to handle massive transaction volumes, not thousands per second, but millions. This is where subnets come in. Think of subnets like private highways connected to the main XRP network. They can process transactions locally for specific institutions or regions while still anchoring back to the main ledger for final settlement. That structure allows XRP to scale infinitely because instead of every transaction fighting for space on one chain, they can run in parallel securely. Bobway's patent on subnet architecture isn't just theoretical. It's designed precisely for this to make XRPL capable of handling global-scale settlement flows. Once this is deployed, you could see institutions like MasterCard, Visa, or even central banks using subnet instances of the XRPL, all interoperable with each other, but localized for their compliance and throughput needs. And remember, scalability without speed is pointless. Ripple's engineers have proven they can maintain sub-5 settlement even at thousands of transactions per second. With subnet architecture, that performance will multiply, allowing for a financial web that can handle every form of value, payments, tokenized securities, CBDCs, stablecoins, real estate titles, and even AI-driven contracts. Speaking of CBDCs, Ripple's partnership list already includes several central banks testing their digital currency infrastructure on Ripple's platform. The XRP ledger's privacy updates and MPT integration make it perfect for this use case because it's not just about issuing digital currencies, it's about making them interoperable. If each country builds its own digital currency on an isolated system, we end up with new silos. But Ripple's technology allows those CBDCs to settle across networks instantly. That's the hidden power here. Interoperability at the protocol level, and the timing couldn't be better. The European Central Bank is finalizing its digital euro pilot. The Bank of England is exploring its digital pound, and the IMF is openly talking about multi-C BTC bridges. While Ethereum and other blockchains are experimenting with tokenization frameworks, the XRP ledger is laser-focused on settlement efficiency. That's what makes it stand out to institutions. It's not about hype, it's about reliability and compliance. Now back to Brad Garlinghous's comments from DC FinTech Week, when he said crypto should have equal access to financial infrastructure like FedMaster accounts. He wasn't just throwing shade at regulators, he was signaling Ripple's readiness to integrate directly into the heart of traditional finance. If Ripple can gain access to Fed-level infrastructure or similar global systems, it effectively becomes part of the backbone of international liquidity. That's when XRP stops being seen as a speculative token and starts being viewed as infrastructure-grade collateral. And this is exactly where the market is heading. Tokenization of everything from corporate bonds to private equity is now a top priority for global institutions. BlackRock, Citi, JP Morgan, and the BIAS are all piloting tokenized asset networks. Ripple fits perfectly into this ecosystem because it provides a compliant bridge for those assets to move globally in real time. It's not a competitor, it's the settlement layer that can interconnect them all. You can already see the shift happening. Institutions aren't asking which coin will go up anymore. They're asking which technology can move real-world assets safely, instantly, and at scale. And that's where XRP stands apart. Ethereum is powerful but congested. During high volume events, gas fees spike into the tens or hundreds of dollars per transaction. The XRP ledger, even under extreme stress, keeps transaction costs negligible. That's exactly what banks and corporates want: predictability and speed. And it's not just the West paying attention. Ripple's reach across Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America continues to expand. Many countries in these regions are exploring Ripple's CBDC platform for their own central banks. These pilots aren't hypothetical, they're running right now. The goal is simple: connect domestic payment systems into a unified global framework where value can move instantly between nations. That's the future Ripple is architecting. Meanwhile, on the corporate side, Ripple is now positioned to compete with giants like JP Morgan's Onyx platform. G Treasury gives Ripple the operational foundation to do exactly that: a massive client base, integrated bank connectivity, and an institutional grade treasury management system. What Onyx did for JP Morgan's clients, Ripple can now do for the rest of the world's corporates, but with faster, cheaper, and blockchain native settlement. And think about what that means strategically. JP Morgan's system still relies heavily on internal liquidity and restricted access. Ripple's system, however, is openly interoperable. Any institution can connect and settle in real time using XRP as the bridge for cross-currency flows. That's a structural advantage that's hard to overstate. Once corporations experience settlement that's instant, traceable, and nearly costless, they won't go back. Even major payment networks like MasterCard and Visa are experimenting with tokenization and settlement pilots, but many of those rely on private blockchains or permissioned environments that don't interoperate easily. Ripple's subnet and sidechain designs are built to bridge those private systems directly into the main XRPL network, creating a seamless hybrid between public trust and institutional control. Now, let's tie this back to what Christine Lagarde said about central bank reserves. When the ECB excludes Bitcoin because of volatility and money laundering concerns, what they're implicitly saying is that they're open to regulated digital assets that meet compliance and liquidity standards. XRP, with its transparent validator set, regulated framework, and energy efficiency, checks those boxes. It's not about replacing fiat. It's about improving how fiat moves. And the bigger narrative here is convergence. Crypto and traditional finance are no longer separate. The CEO of Robinhood even said it. Crypto is the next stage of financial evolution. Just like we moved from paper to mainframes, from on-premise to cloud, crypto is the next infrastructure layer where business logic and value exchange merge into one. In that world, assets, payments, and data all live on interoperable ledgers. Ripple's role in that shift is clear: to make the system work seamlessly. That's why the conversation has shifted from will XRP be used to when will it be fully integrated. Every major move Ripple's making, from G Treasury to subnet research to MPT activation, points toward readiness. Readiness for real-world volume, readiness for global liquidity, readiness for the era of tokenized finance. And right now, while everyone debates price charts, what's unfolding is a total re-architecture of global value movement. The institutions that understand this, the ones integrating Ripple tech quietly behind the scenes, are the ones setting themselves up for the next financial era. So with Ripple now embedded in corporate treasury systems, connected to SWIFT, and preparing to handle institutional scale transaction volumes, the next phase is political positioning, because at the highest levels, finance and policy always intersect, and Ripple is already being invited to those rooms. This week, Brad Garlinghouse attended the White House Ballroom fundraising dinner, a private gala bringing together major corporations, donors, and policymakers. The headline might sound like just another high-end event, but here's what makes it significant. Every company in attendance pledged between $1 and $25 million toward the campaign. This isn't about politics. It's about access. Access to the conversations shaping the next era of money. When Ripple executives are present at these types of gatherings, It's a clear signal that they're no longer just crypto outsiders. They are sitting at the same table as the architects of global finance. Ripple's focus now is bridging regulatory understanding with technological capability. The company knows that mass adoption won't come from retail hype. It comes from institutional integration, regulatory trust, and global alignment. And that's exactly where Ripple is concentrating its energy, getting governments, regulators, and financial institutions on the same page for what digital liquidity can really do. At the same time, the European Central Bank is reinforcing that only compliant, secure, and energy efficient digital assets will have a role in future reserves. Christine Lagarde made it explicit Bitcoin won't be included in central bank reserves because of volatility and illicit finance concerns. That single statement sent shockwaves through the market, but beneath the surface, it confirmed something bigger. Central banks are considering digital assets. They're just narrowing it down to those that meet specific institutional criteria. Ask yourself which asset fits the bill. XRP has the liquidity, the energy profile, the compliance framework, and the interoperability model. It's fast, traceable, and auditable. It's already being used in pilot programs for CBDCs, and it's backed by a company that's building regulated bridges into global banking systems. The pieces align. Meanwhile, outside of the central bank conversation, institutions like Robinhood are openly stating what many already believe, that crypto isn't just a speculative layer, it's the next infrastructure layer for global finance. Robinhood's CEO put it best: crypto is the evolution after cloud computing. It's where all business logic, exchanges, lending, payments, and asset transfers becomes programmable shared infrastructure. In that kind of future, there's no separation between stocks, bonds, and crypto. They all live on interoperable ledgers, and when those ledgers talk to each other, settlement speed becomes everything. That's where the XRP ledger shines brightest. Its design wasn't built for meme coins or NFTs, it was built for the flow of institutional money. Sub 5-second settlement, deterministic validation, and near zero fees. It's not flashy, it's foundational, the kind of infrastructure you don't notice until it's everywhere. And look at where we're heading now. The IMF is developing frameworks for cross-CBDC interoperability. The BIS is testing multi-CBDC systems. BlackRock is tokenizing funds. Citi is tokenizing deposits. And Ripple is integrating with systems that already move trillions every single day. When you connect all those dots, it's obvious. Ripple's building the missing bridge between traditional banking systems and tokenized global liquidity. What's even more fascinating is how fear and uncertainty in the markets are pushing institutions toward blockchain, not away from it. Every time there's instability in global liquidity, governments and banks look for faster, safer ways to move money. Blockchain isn't just a tech experiment anymore. It's a structural solution, and Ripple's ledger, designed from the ground up for payments and settlement, is the closest real-world implementation of that solution we have. Now add G-Treasury's infrastructure on top of that. A network that already spans over 160 countries, 13,000 banks, and 1,000 major clients. And you have Ripple's instant global reach. All of this is happening as Ripple continues to emphasize compliance, sustainability, and regulatory collaboration. That's the trifecta every institution is looking for: speed, security, and legitimacy. This alignment between innovation, compliance, and global scale is what sets Ripple apart. It's no longer about being the next Bitcoin or Ethereum competitor. It's about being the connective tissue of a digital financial world. Every bank, every government, every corporate treasury, every tokenized asset will eventually need a way to move value instantly and securely across networks. That's the role Ripple is filling. The silent, invisible layer that makes the whole machine run smoothly. And it's not just theory anymore, we're watching it unfold. Subnets in development, MPT activated, G-Treasury integrated, and Ripple executives at the table with the world's largest financial and political leaders. That's not hype, that's the infrastructure phase, the part no one sees until it's already built. So, the next time someone says XRP isn't ready for global finance, think about what's already in motion. Ripple isn't preparing for a future where it's one of many blockchain players. It's preparing for a future where it is the bridge, the core layer that powers a borderless tokenized financial system. Because in the end, the world doesn't need 10,000 tokens. It needs one global settlement network that everyone can trust, one that's fast, efficient, interoperable, and regulatory friendly. And that's exactly what Ripple's building right now, step by step, integration by integration, partner by partner. The shift is already underway. And when it fully clicks into place, when global finance, tokenized assets, and instant settlement converge, XRP will be at the center of that new system. If you want to truly understand how this all connects, how Ripple's infrastructure, the XRP ledger, and institutional adoption tie together into one of the biggest financial shifts of our lifetime, I break it all down inside the XRP Millionaire Blueprint. It includes a document, an infographic, a detailed video walkthrough, and more, all built to help you see the full roadmap clearly and confidently.